this. All right, team, welcome to the Three Kings and Newcastle Advisors. I guess first collab, it's a brief collab, which is just on the best topic of all time, being the budget, federal budget wrap up. We're going to do a market update as well. I guess a bit of an intro. So myself, I'm Ryan King, the director of Three Kings Wealth Management, where we look after young, ambitious hustlers looking to plan for their future while still enjoying the present. Matty and I work quite closely together because I guess I don't look after many retirees and do the real complex stuff, and Matty does. So we work very close together in that aspect, and he takes on a lot of my clients' parents, as well as helps with a lot of my strategies. And Matty, you want to give an intro to my clients?
G'day, I'm Matty McCabe. I run Newcastle Advisors. We're based out of Lake Macquarie up here in Newcastle, and mainly I'm focusing on retirees, pre-retirees, and those complex situations that most people can't find a solution for. That's really what I love to sink my teeth into, and really where our business shines and is different to other financial planning practices.
100%. So today we're going to take you through. Matty's put some slides together, and I said this on my Instagram before. Don't think that we've come up with this all on our own. All right, we're just you want to see our inboxes on the morning after the federal budget. It's more deleting than it is reading. But there's some good stuff that come out of the budget. It's not really. It's a bit of a boring one given the past few years. But in saying it's probably good things that might follow through on a few things because it's not really a political one. Given usually they just throw up some fluff and have a chat and try and get some votes across the board. So some interesting stuff. Matty's put together some slides. I've chucked some at the end, just some three that weren't in there that I thought might be interesting. And then after that, we'll do a bit of a market wrap and a market update, what we're doing with our clients, and where things are where we think things are heading. And guys, if any of you know my brand, this chat's going to be pretty casual. If you want to jump in, have a chat, let us know. Or just put your hand up, or however you do it. Jump in the chat box, and we'll let you know. Other than that, I'll share my screen, and we'll get cracking. Matty, just confirm you can see that.
Yeah, we've got it now. Yep.
Just want to make sure it wasn't a different page,
Yeah.
All right. So collab began.
So we're going to run through a few things. As Kingy said, the budget was a bit underwhelming. We'll go through the tax offsets, the increase to Medicare levy, some social security stuff. There's a few guys in here that may benefit from the paid parental leave and the uplift to the thresholds, myself included. Reduction in fuel excess, which is pretty topical at the moment. Go through some super thresholds, what that looks like at the moment, and then some small business stuff before we tackle some market updates, both investment market and also the property market outlook as well, which is also very topical, which King and I tend to get a bit of heat from on social media about our views on the property market.
You love it, right? You love it.
All right. You're going to have to...
Yeah, I've got it. So just on that as well, so the couple of extra slides that I've chucked in there myself, I've just added one in there about employee share schemes. I don't know if any of you guys on this now are, but we've got quite a few clients in the employer share scheme works, and there's some interesting reforms maybe happening there. So it's cool to understand that. And then the other one is, Matty and I were talking about patents the other day with one of my brand names. So I'm not sure if any of you guys, but I started taking a bit of interest in patents. So there's a patent change as well around the taxation of income generated from patents. So just interesting to understand there. All right.
So first off is, I don't know how political we can get, but some would say this is trying to buy votes coming up to a federal election. There's a one-off $420 tax offset. It goes all the way up to anyone earning less than $126,000. So that captures a lot of people. I think last night they were trying to say that it affects 10 million Australians, this little tax offset. So for dual income families, it could be up to $3,000 in offsets that we'll get. come 1 July when we start doing our tax returns. Okay, so it's ready in place for this financial year, and we'll get it once we do our tax returns. So the government's not physically giving you cash or anything like that. You have to do your tax returns first. Also, this is a way for the government to make sure that you do your tax returns and catch up by handing out little tax offsets like this.
And catch up the 7 years that you missed and have to pay tax.
The 7 or 8 years you haven't done yet just to get this $400. The other thing is, if you're just over 126,000, if you're sitting in that bracket, there may be strategies around that just to bring you under, just to get you a few extra dollars as well. So let Kingy or myself know, and we can have a chat around that as well.
And Matty, that's individual or household, just for everyone?
Individual. 126,000 is individual.
Next one.
Yeah. So this kind of breaks up exactly what the offset will be. So if we start up the top, if you're earning less than 37,000, we're getting a tax offset of up to $675. Okay, so that means if you're paying tax, you're going to get $675 of that back. And then it really cascades up as well as we keep increasing the income levels on the left-hand side, taxable income. We go all the way up to potentially $1,500 tax offset. So nice little incentive from the government. Again, it captures a lot of people, but there's nothing really you have to do from your end except submit your tax return. So there's nothing additional. You don't have to apply to anyone or anything like that. It's going to happen automatically when your tax return gets submitted.
Correct. I think I don't know if you've got the same thing, Matty, but I've had a lot of clients that are starting to, I don't know if there's a book they're reading or something's coming up, but a lot of people talking a lot to me about assessable versus taxable. And a lot of people are confusing their assessable income versus taxable. That's what Matty was saying before. Just because your assessable income is over 126,000 doesn't mean there's not strategies to bring your taxable under and get you these benefits. So very, very important you understand that, because once it's gone, it's going to be very hard to get it back. Yeah.
So you want to explain the difference, King, between assessable and taxable?
I don't know it. Can you do that? So assessable income. Do you have a good advisor I can speak to, bro? No. So assessable income is your total income, what the taxman assesses. The taxable part is essentially after your negative gearing and after any strategy you have to reduce what you pay tax on, might be salary sacrifice, all those kind of things. What is actually taxed at the end? That is your taxable income, what goes into the tiers and how your rates are taxed at. This is where the strategies are relatively simple. What's complex is what's best for you in your current situation as well as long term. Right? You got to be careful, because I work very carefully with some pretty good accountants, and even those guys, a lot of accountants, they look at their job is to minimize tax this year, and sometimes that's not the best way to take, to go onto your overall plan. So it's really important that it's not just as simple as switching under from the assessable threshold down to the taxable threshold. It's important that you understand that you're doing it the right way for your long-term benefits as well. Because
one of those things, King, is actually buying property or getting a loan and things like that. So we've seen in the last few years with property prices going crazy that people are trying to get larger loans and things like that. And their accountants done such a good job that their income is significantly low. But to try and service a loan, then they're finding it very difficult. So they've had to go back and amend tax returns to show that and pay more tax to be able to get the investment property or the home that they desire. So that's what King is talking about, looking at the whole picture and not just about reducing tax.
Yeah, it's like when business owners, accountants tell them just to spend a couple of bucks to get tax rebates when you're spending $1 to save 50 cents, right? Similarly, we need to make sure that we're not just doing it to get the $3,000 and costing ourselves $5,000 in the long run.
Yep.
All right, you done on that slide, Manny?
Yep. The next one. So this is the big one everyone's talking about at the moment. Petrol prices over $2. But at present, of that $2, the government's taking 44 cents a litre in tax. So everyone gets up in arms about the big oil companies or the big petrol companies and how much money they're making. But the government's putting their hand in and taking 44 cents per litre. So not only do you get taxed your income tax for actually earning money, after you've paid that tax and you go to the browser to fill up your car to go to work, they're taxing you again. So what they've done is said, well, we're getting a bit of heat here. It is an election year as well. So let's slash that by 50%. So now we're only going to take, they're still going to take tax, but only 22 cents a litre. So on an average 45 litre tank, we're saving about $9.90 a tank. So not huge amounts, but still every little bit adds up, especially to family budgets and things like that. So I think it's really intelligent from the government coming into election, but yeah, I think it more or less highlighted how much tax they were getting from us, from the population, that we didn't really know about. Like lots of people didn't know the government was taking that much. So
my question for you, Matty, on this tonight is what stops the, like, I'm not actually across the fuel stuff too. I pay a piss ton of it, but what's what's stopping the people at the Bowser? What's stopping at the servo owners from just slowly creeping back up on that 44 cents? You know, it's like, you know, when the RBA doesn't raise the cash rate, but the banks do, they say, oh, it's coming. Yeah. What's the difference between that margin being taken from them?
Nothing. So the government came out and said, we'll be watching servos, making sure they do the right thing, and the reductions there.
Well, is that the ACCC that would be in charge of that?
Yeah, I think there's a servo government body that watches it. And they'll come out and watch it for the first couple of weeks, and they'll disappear.
What do you reckon? 7-Eleven's being watched by 24/7, or what? Is that the?
Yeah. No, I think the ACCC are in there, but to be honest, I don't think they do too much. I don't think they're going to do a lot. But I think we'll see a drop in the first couple of weeks, and then we'll see some rhetoric come back around. Say, you know, with Russia and the war over there, oil prices, petrol prices are still going to remain high. So I think we will see an initial drop, at least until May when the election is, and then things may change again after that. Marginal tax rates. So nothing was announced last night, which was kind of good, because that means what has previously been legislated is still going to stay in force. So what we're moving towards is from 1 July 2024, so we've got to fast forward 2 years, everyone earning between 45 and 200,000 will pay a maximum of 30% tax. So they're going to simplify our tax system. So that means anyone from the 45 to 30%, 37% tax bracket, they get a cut down to 30%. So this is really important for those people that are self-employed, business owners, things like that. And you're starting to plan out your next 2 or 3 years worth of income and start tax planning as well with your accountant, or speaking to your financial planner about plans for your income. We need to start taking all this into account as well, saying there's going to be extra money floating around from the reduced tax we have to pay, which is
going to have a significant impact on affordability for housing as well, especially for business owners, because how many of us are torn between paying ourselves under a threshold and being able to service a certain loan we need as well? You know, I think this is a game.
100%. And on top of that, Kingy, there's also some tax planning stuff where you look to hold different investments moving forward. So in the past, we've seen people set up companies, set up investment bonds, set up trust structures to put different investments in to try and spread the tax. And we may not see that moving forward then, because the need may not be there when everyone's paying 30% tax.
Correct. Nope, it's not moving. Hang
on. Just a small one. So the Medicare levy threshold has been increased, not by a great deal. You see from a family, it's gone up $300 odd. Not really that significant, to be honest. Your thoughts on this, Kingy?
Zero.
Let's go again.
Is that even inflation?
No.
I'm more worried about inflation than my Medicare.
Yeah. This is a pretty cool one. So Social Security, people getting Social Security benefits, age pension, disability support pension, carers pension. And then there's 50 other different types of allowances in that range. They're getting a one-off $250 payment.
This includes my my DVA and veteran payment guys as well that are on here.
Yeah.
So, get that.
Perfect. Yeah. So they're not paying it today. They're going to wait to pay it 2 weeks before the election on the 29th of April. Just so you remember that the government paid you $250.
They should do it a day after the results are announced.
Yeah. Good luck with that. So that's going to filter through in the next month or so for these people on these entitlements. And this comes off the back of, I think it's been 2 or 3 of these types of payments over the last couple of years during COVID. So with cost of living going through the roof over the past 12 months, this is a little handout to help out. Youth allowance is included in that as well. Mark? PBS or Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme. Again, we've seen just a little change, nothing too significant. We've got concession holders, which is all your Social Security entitlement holders, really. So it's reducing from $326 a year down to $244. So what that means is when you go into the chemist and you're purchasing medicine or pharmaceuticals, and it goes over that threshold of $244, anyone on a concession card then gets those medicines for free after that threshold's reached. Anyone else in the general public, their threshold is $1,457. And then anything over that, a prescription is $6.80 per prescription. So really good, the government's reduced it. It's going to cost them, tens of millions of dollars over the next few years. And this kicks in from 1 July 2020, okay? I just wanted to throw this one in. This is a quick snapshot of what's happening in super. So super guarantee, what your employer pays, that's increasing from next year by 0.5%. And then every year after, it continues to increase by 0.5%. The concessional cap, which is how much your employer can put in, is up to $27,500. Non-concessional cap, which is how much you can contribute from your bank account or personal money, is $110,000. Yeah, this is from 1st of July 2022. So at the moment, the super guarantee is 10% at the moment. Government co-contributions. So we get the full government co-contribution if you're earning less than $42,000, and then it gets phased out at $57,000. Again, if you're in this range and looking to boost your super, speak to Kingy or myself and we can have a chat around that. And then the account-based pension, which we're going to speak about shortly, there's a reduction in the minimum payments that we pay. So we'll talk about that in a bit more detail here. To be honest, this only really affects people that have retired and who have a large amount of wealth and are drawing out of their superannuation less than the 4% minimum, okay? So lots of my clients tend to draw more than the 4%, more than the minimum, because they actually need that to live on. So this is, let's say if you've got $1 million inside super and you only want to live off 50 or 100 grand a year. So this is really in place there. So rather than drawing out the minimum, so what the government's done is they've said with superannuation, when you retire, there's no earnings tax, income tax, or capital gains tax inside super, okay? So there's nil tax environment. So the government hates this. Government hates it because that person is not paying tax for the rest of their life. So now the government's put in place that you have to withdraw 4% each year as a minimum, which then increases to 14% by the time you turn age 95, okay? So they're trying to get money out of this nil tax environment into your own name, so you either spend it or you start to get taxed at your marginal tax rates. So the good thing here that they've done is said, well, because of what's happening in the world with COVID, with market volatility, we've actually reduced the 4% minimum to 2%. So you only have to take a minimum of 2% out of your account.
But this is huge for those sort of over 60 still working that might have implemented TTR, right?
Correct.
It's massive, because a lot of time you don't need to draw anymore, and it's just a recycling strategy. So
correct.
For those people over 60 that haven't fully retired, and if you haven't implemented a TTR, then you need to chat to one of us ASAP. But really, really good for some of our clients. We do it because it stops the leakage, stops the transition having to happen too much.
Yeah, so we get to keep more money in super where there's no tax. That's all it is. So really good. And they're pretty much explained. So the right-hand side column, you see anyone under 65, there's a minimum of 4% drawdown. And then if we go to 95% plus, we've got 14% drawdown. So that's 14% of your total balance each year. So that's been reduced. Yeah, next one, King. Paid parental leave. So this one's pretty cool, especially for my family. So we were on the threshold of this as well. So integrating dad, partner pay, and parental leave pay. Eligible families will be up to 20 weeks between them. So you can share 20 weeks between you within 2 years of your child's birth or adoption. Okay. Currently, paid parental leave is only available if the mother earns less than 150. Okay, so if you've got working mother in the family, she's earning more than 150, it may have been an issue in the past, but now they're changing it to the whole family group. So the partner, mother, father, or mother, whatever it may be, to $350,000 per year. Okay, so significant increase, especially if the mother was the breadwinner in the family as well. Now there's an opportunity to still access this paid parental leave, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love this one. This one's good. This one's brilliant.
Yeah. And also, if you're self-employed, you can hold back income for certain years as well, which is pretty cool, just to get around some of these thresholds. So there's some pretty cool strategies which we can implement there. Small business. Kingy, did you want to touch on this one? I think you've spoken about traineeships and that in the past week or so. So this kind of flows on from that.
So with the end as of tomorrow, I think, of the 50% government subsidy for traineeships and apprenticeships. I think that ends tomorrow, actually. I think we just got our last one in. So this is a pretty cool little announcement, which is why this is applying from the 29th of March, because the existing one finished on the 31st. March, April, 31st. So essentially, all small business will be able to deduct 20% of expenditure incurred on external training courses. So another benefit for business owners to be able to educate and grow their existing force without costing, too much towards themselves. And this goes hand in hand with, which I think the next slide is the technology boost on the next slide.
Yep.
So obviously, the bottom line Maddie's put there with the check your accountant, it is important because there is some rules and legislation around this, right? So for example, they've got to be Australian citizens. Okay, you can't train your offshore staff for this stuff. I tried, didn't work. But they've got to be Australian citizens. They've got to meet certain amount of hours, right? So there is some guidelines behind it. They've got to be permanent. They've got to transition to permanent before it starts, and it's got to be within a certain period. So, but it is cool. We've just gone through the 50% subsidy, which was amazing. Obviously, the government can't keep doing that forever, but a 20% reduction is pretty cool as well. I think if you got into the 50% subsidy first and foremost, it does tier down to roughly this over the next 5 or so years anyhow. It gets lower and lower after their first 12 months. There's some other subsidies, but it's just a tiered process, and this is essentially what the new eligibility is. So under the technology boost, I'll continue, Matty. Under the technology boost, basically, you get pretty much money back on any costs incurred for business expenses and depreciating asset, right? So it's essentially 120%, which means the full cost plus an extra 20% will become a deduction against your business income. There are some things that the things that you can and can't claim on it, right? So any of you guys are retailers, anyone does retail, you'll get some pretty good there'll be some pretty good ability for you there with your payment systems. For me and Matty, cybersecurity would be our biggest one because we pay a piss ton in that. And any other cloud-based people here as well will need that as well. And then subscription. So I know, like, a lot of us, if anyone here that is a small business owner, even if you run under ABN and stuff like that, like, you start adding up your subscriptions. I think I pay something like $14,500 a year in subscriptions of just technology and rubbish, and it's like $50 a month here and 50 just of stuff that keeps the business going. So you get the full 100% deduction of that, plus another 20%, which is a nice little kicker to help people transition towards being a more paperless and a more sustainable or cloud-based company. There's a cap on it up to $100,000, but we've got just over a year to get this boost in. So make sure you chat with your advisor, or mostly chat with your accountant this year to see what are your expenses, and have you if you don't have zero or something like that, make sure that you've got zero MYB, tracking all these expenses so that you can highlight and look at what things might be eligible under this. Your accountant should be all over it. If they're not, let us know. We'll find you a new one, but they should be all over that. And then lastly from me, before Matty kicks off with the with the market wrap, just three that we haven't talked about that I thought were interesting. So obviously, we hate the popo. So the tax in our industry is the popo, the tax man. So there's a tax avoidance task force coming through. I thought this was pretty interesting. It's been extended, the one that's already there, but it's been extended up to 30th of June 2025. Okay, which they're assuming that they'll fund the ATO an extra $650 million. Right, so they're coming for us. That's the cash money right there. Right.
Did you read that bit?
What?
King?
What?
It also scrutinizes specialist tax advisors.
Did it?
That promote tax avoidance schemes. So pretty much, no, we don't do that.
No, there's a big difference between tax avoidance and tax minimization.
Yep.
One you talk about, one you don't. One you put on social media, one you don't. Oh yeah, that next post. Yeah. So it's interesting, guys, to make sure that, I guess, I don't know what industry. I find that I've had quite a few clients in similar industries at the moment getting audited. It seems to be quiet. There was about 2 years ago, our veterans were getting quite audited pretty often because we were the worst. We were the worst at you buy 7 packs every year, obviously. But that once the veteran stuff started popping up in the Royal Commission for Veteran Suicide, they sort of went quiet on that. So it's interesting. I haven't seen where they're sort of targeting their focus at the moment, apart from small business. I've seen a lot of small business stuff getting ragged through, but I'm sure you need to have a chat with your accountant and make sure that, especially like part 9A, is it part 9A? Is that the one, which is the look through?
7A.
7A, that's the one. So anything that may be seen as the ultimate reason is to reduce tax, that you will be shoved under the bus, then we need to have a chat and make sure you got some systems there. But there's not always the end of the world. There's some extra stuff your accountant can do off the back of that to make sure you're right. The next one is the Peyton Box Scheme. So this is just saying that the Peyton income, so it allows Peyton income to be taxed at a concession rate of 17% instead of the 25 or 30, but it has to be all done in Australia. This is just a boost for people to get more, more ideas coming out of Australia, which is pretty cool, in the agricultural, medical, biotech, and low emissions technology. Obviously, me and Matty see differently on this, but there's a lot of money going towards the sustainable sector, especially in Australia, and this is just another part of that, and another bit of extra bonus and benefits going towards that sector. Because why? At the end of the day, it's always the same reason: politicians want more votes, right? So pushing this through is definitely going to help them hit those numbers and also be friendly with the UN. And then the last one, the employee share scheme. So it's just an increase from $5,000 per employee to $30,000 per employee, which I thought. So this is just a reform. This isn't nothing's really put down yet. It's just this was they're put forward as a reform. Basically, make sure that you can increase your share offering from 5,000 to 30,000. But the part I thought was pretty cool is it can be accrued, right? So it can be accrued for up to 5 years, meaning ultimately,
if you don't use it 1 year, use it the next year.
Yeah, correct. And I think that's pretty cool, especially if you're in one of those startup tech companies. Sort of hold off and decide whether you want to load up or not. But it's definitely, some of the vesting and some of the rules around employee share schemes at the moment are pretty hard. Like they're pretty complex and non-flexible. Yeah. This opens it up a little bit. And on top of that, I've got a lot of clients who work for Microsoft and Amazon as well. And
we've got all the miners up here that get it as well.
Yeah, your BHP and that kind of stuff. So, and sometimes with those big blue chippers, or global powerhouses, sometimes you want to load up more than the 5,000, So, and if you're not executive level, you can't get that. So this is pretty cool. I think it's pretty interesting. My wife works for Dulux, and we had the $5,000 limit. And I was filthy on it. So this is nice. This is a nice little change that hopefully goes through, and it'll come from the reduction in the red tape, which good luck. Hopefully they can swing some reduction in red tape our way after this. But yeah, I think that's all right. The other proposition is that they want to remove the cap entirely, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there, so that's talking about prior to a liquidity event, so a sale or a listing or something like that. And it's available for all companies essentially, right? Not just startups, so any unlisted company, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
Other than that, they're the three that I thought were interesting that we sort of skipped on, that weren't the main ones.
Also, one other thing, King, we'll stay with employee share scheme for a second. Sure. King and I got an update the other day from an investment platform. And those guys that get employee share schemes tend to have a higher proportion of their investments in that company, be it Microsoft, BHP or whatnot. So moving forward, we're able to exclude that company from your portfolio because you've already got such a high exposure. So you don't want exposure to that anymore from any investments King or I recommend. I thought that was pretty cool as well, especially for these guys getting share schemes.
Yeah, especially if this proposal goes through too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to hire a bigger allocation to it, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
This way, you wouldn't really need. I don't think there's many people that need more than a $30,000 per year allocation to many single stocks. All right. Any questions?
Any questions, guys?
You can chuck it in the chat.
No.
Do whatever. No.
Okay. We'll probably get more questions about the next bits. They're a bit more exciting anyway, Kingy.
Yeah.
Quick market update. So Russia's invaded Ukraine. That's kind of killed the energy supply and other key commodities across Europe.
Hang on, when did this happen?
As Russia's providing over 60% of Europe's energy at the moment, or they were before all the sanctions came through. And the Ukraine has large reserves of uranium and also iron ore. So we're seeing commodity prices go through the roof over the last, it's been 6 to 8 weeks. And probably the bit that doesn't get spoken about much is Ukraine is a critical agricultural country within Europe. So it's got the capacity to feed over 600 million people each year, which is phenomenal, right? And it's just been blown up. So the ability to feed Europe, and you see the politicians in Europe, they're starting to get nervous and they're looking for securing their food supplies moving forward. So this is going to have clear inflationary implications or pressure. So at the moment, inflation is very high, and we're going to see the Fed Reserve over in America have already raised interest rates over there, and they're going to get pressured to raise them faster and quicker and sooner. So we'll see that in the next month or so. I think the next one comes in May, but also that's going to filter back to Australia. So what that means is that we're going to see interest rates rise over here, which is going to put pressure on house prices and household budgets as well. So we're expecting a 1 to 2% interest rate rise in the next few months, or next 12 to 18 months in Australia. In the US, it's going to happen a lot quicker. Okay. On top of that, these commodity price increases is going to be good for Australia and the Australian stock market, because we're very commodity focused and high commodities in our top 20 or 30 stocks with BHP, Rio Tinto, all the big miners. So our stock market over the short term, while there's this cloud hanging over Europe, is going to be a lot stronger than what you see globally. But once the war de-escalates or finishes, whatever that looks like, we'll start to see commodity prices come off, which will then affect the Australian share market more than it will affect the overseas share market. So just a few things to keep in mind when we're moving forward with that. Anything to add, King, on that side of things?
No, I think you said it really well. I think it's the same thing that we're talking about is we've got a more short-term weighting towards domestics that have a low valuation, but we are keeping our eye very heavily on global equities that are showing significant valuation drops. That, you know, because we've got to be honest, right? Even with the inflationary pressures and everything going on, the market is so emotional that it's unequivocally impacting areas that from emotion, not from numbers.
Not from fundamentals, yeah.
100%, not from fundamentals.
So it's all coming from human behavior.
100%.
So humans are stupid. They react on bad news and noise.
So what I'm saying with these, with Maddie, what you're saying exactly, but that's how it should theoretically look on paper. So what we're trying to look for is, at the moment, where that's our core, that's what we're managing for our sustainable sector, or not sustainable in green, but our long-term sort of keeping volatility low, but our satellites are running simply in the emotional area outside of that. So domestically, what's more bearish than what it should be, and globally, what's significantly more bearish than what it should be as well.
Awesome. Next page. So over the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see growth be lower for longer. So there's going to be no double-digit returns like we've seen in the past, in my view anyway, King. We've seen a small relief rally over the last probably week and a half, 2 weeks.
Depends when you're bought in, Matty. We might be getting these double digits if you're buying in, right? Yeah.
Correct. So if we're dollar cost averaging in, or you're just getting in now, you may see double digits. But if you've been in the whole time and your whole money's invested, possibly not. So we've seen this, what we call a relief rally. So the market's picked back up a little bit. So originally it was down about 7%, and now we're down about 1% from the start of the year. So it has come back, but we're expecting more volatility, okay? Because things have still got to play out, especially the war in Russia. We've got China, which has locked down half their country because of COVID, and they tend to export a lot of goods out to the rest of the world. We've got shipping delays still, and shipping prices are through the roof, even still, as a hangover from COVID. And then we've got all this inflationary pressure and commodity prices higher. So with
perfect storm, mate.
It is the perfect storm. Plus, we're getting, petrol prices higher, oil prices higher.
Housing prices.
On the back of that, we're going to start to see interest rates rise as well. So everyone's going to be hurting a little bit, especially from the expense side of things. So yeah, from our side of things, the types of investments we're looking at long-short investment managers, where they don't only profit from markets going up, They also profit from markets falling as well. Real assets like infrastructure and utilities, high yielding funds, and also commodities, both soft and gold commodities as well. Anything to add from that side of things, King?
Now we're very similar on this thought process. Obviously, best case scenario, we're still, got to be a 6-month recovery, most likely 12 to 18 months. So I guess from our point of view, we sort of have a formula. How far the market pushes down exacerbates the amount of percentage that we start dollar cost averaging in. We've gone back to neutral now. So last couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks ago, we were at almost 100%. So we're loading up. All our clients were dumping, thousands of dollars into the assets we saw to their portfolios. But now we're sort of, like Matty said, it's a small relief rally, but I think there's more volatility. So we've slowed down our dollar cost averaging back to neutral, just to keep chipping away, because we could be wrong. Couldn't we, Matty? We could always be wrong.
We could be wrong.
We could always be wrong. So we want to keep buying at this price, making sure that if it goes up, then we're still good. But we are slowing because I do see more volatility. I don't want clients deploying too much cash when there could be more opportunity down the track. The only differences that we kind of have in this, we hold long, short investments. I think Matty and I hold roughly the same ones. Yeah. We have high yielding funds in our defensive exposure more so the hybrids and that kind of stuff. But we have moved away from commodities only from the gold sector. We just moved away from our gold ETF, and I've included the fuel and the food ETF in there as well that we talked about, Matty. I just think they've got a currency hedge in there as well, which I like, and gold is so over. The gold did its job for us in maintaining, I guess, through stagflationary issues and that kind of thing. Also to try and, a bit of capital preservation. But I just feel like for our clients, given our clients are a lot younger, we're not retiring, that kind of stuff, we've moved away from the gold and into the agricultural and the more oil stuff. But gold is still on our watch list. If we hit more volatility, there's a good chance that we'll buy back in.
Mate, just give me 1 second. Just keep going. 1 second.
No worries. So that's not, I guess, in relation to the gold, it's not saying that shouldn't be held. I've put out a notice today to any clients that have still got a positive return on that, or a small loss that we should consider transitioning out. But it's not whether it's right or wrong. Gold is an all-time high at the moment. We weren't holding it for a return. We were holding it for a bit of a hedge, and also holding it for a bit of capital preservation, because a neutral return is better than a negative 10, right? That's 10%. So it's done its job for us at the moment. We're rolling it back into some other stuff, but it's always there in our watchable holdings to make sure that it's good to go. We've also sold off a couple of individual stocks that we were holding. Just didn't like their value. We held them for a bit, got a good return on them. And then, moving into the environment, if there is more volatility, they're a bit exposed. So we've moved out of them as well. But we've got a couple of really high yielding stocks that are undervalued, getting great dividends out of them, or looking like we're going to get great dividends out of them, and some really good undervalued stocks that are being hit and impacted when they shouldn't be. So that's probably the biggest changes in our holdings, at least this week.
And I think on top of that, the looking for that yield, because we're not going to see that growth so much. I think yield is going to be there to replace some of our growth.
Yeah, and I think the other thing between us that's different, Matt, is that the sustainable sector and the tech sector a little bit, where our portfolios have had a significant tilt towards them, which just because of our clientele. And so I guess where I agree with you 100% to minimize volatility, we've talked about this, is definitely want to go for yield, but the majority of my clients want volatility at the moment. They're looking for it. So we do have the yield there in our defense and in our core to make sure that it's, it
offsets a little bit. Yeah.
But in our satellites, we are not looking for yield. In our satellites, we are looking for undervalued companies that are significantly undervalued, both domestic and globally, And to be fair, we're costing ourselves a fair bit in transaction fees doing this because we are being quite active in that space. But that's what my clients want. That's where we seem to get those short-term double digits that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I in no way pretend that's going to continue for 18 months.
Yeah, perfect. I think probably the other thing you need to mention here is we are currently talking about a merger as well, or talking about joining forces. So I think this will really be good for a lot of my younger clients, King, as well, to get some of your investment expertise as well. So we could be changing some type of investment styles. So I focus more on the older clients as well, and those investments, and you're focusing on our younger clients looking for that growth and can handle a bit of volatility, like you said.
Yeah, 100%. I think, Matty, I will not pretend for a second, anyone here, that Matty is a lot better at investing long-term than I am. But in the same token, I think the part that we bring is, I don't mind a bit of crypto. I don't mind a bit of risk, this kind of stuff, but I do it properly. And I think I'm not sitting here saying crypto is great. You watch my Instagram, I smash crypto because people are morons and think they know more than they do. But the style that I bring is that, if you've got a 5% allocation and it's not going to impact your 95% allocation that's achieving your goals, I'm happy for us to have a play with that, and that's kind of the change. That's what my clients are kind of looking for. At the moment, to be fair, our under 30s or under 35s, we're holding like 20% of their allocation in shit that they probably shouldn't be holding, like as equal to, we've got the CRIP fund I was telling you about, Matty. So the CRIP ETF, and the ARC ETF, which are down hard, we've got a big holding there as well. So it's just different. But it's not about, if you're on here watching this and you're a 55-year-old and you're trying to make double-digit returns and risk everything, it's crazy, right? That's ludicrous. That ain't the shit. The biggest return you're going to get right now if you're coming towards retirement is to not lose money.
Yeah. Perfect.
Right? Or at least lose as little as possible.
Yeah. Next one, Key. I think we jump into the property market.
Yes, my favorite. I love houses.
All right. I'll kick off first, mate. So the big economists in the country, CBA, Westpac, NAB, ANZ, and AMP, are all predicting slowdowns in the property market. Last year, we did 30-odd% in Sydney and Melbourne, capital cities. And the long-term average is 7% year-on-year growth. So as you can see here, some are around the single digits, some are flat at 0% this year. CBA is even negative this year, but they're all very similar next year, around that -7 to -11%. And then a couple even went out to 2024 and said -5%. So we're expecting a change. We're already starting to see that in the property markets in Sydney, in certain pockets. So not all pockets. I'm having an argument at the moment in the Facebook group with one of our clients. He's an infill land developer, and he's saying it's still going crazy out in Western Sydney. I said, yeah, there's no land left, mate. It's scarce. So we see that. But in existing properties in Sydney, and it will flow up and get to Newcastle as well, we will start to see slowdown. So real estate agents are already saying clearance rates are dropping. So last year, property would last 3 or 4 days on the market and then get sold for over what the vendor, which is the seller, predicted. Now they're seeing that last 4 to 6 weeks and get passed in at auction. Okay. So only half the properties now in Sydney that are going to auction are selling. That was
I think it's important. I think the thing that, especially that it grinds my gears on your Facebook group post there, is all property is not equal, right?
Correct.
All property is not equal. I'm sick of seeing this. It's the same as shares. It's like saying, oh, why didn't BHP do what this small mining company did 7,000% last year? Fucking wake up to yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's different. And I'd love to be a property expert that was flipping places off the plan up in Brizzy for the last 10 years, and it's finally got a bit of a return. That's where that'd be like saying, oh, well, property growth in Sydney is stagnant, but it's still booming up in the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane. Yeah. That's just because of affordability. While debt is still cheap and while people are still moving, But the bottom line here is supply is going to outweigh demand and interest rates are going to move north, right? And I did these numbers the other day, Matty. Like, I think there are, I hate economists, by the way. Anyone watching, I hate them. They're like weathermen, I reckon. Most times they're
Yeah.
a bit hit them, tell you it's
No,
raining.
no responsibility if they get it wrong. None.
100%. But I do not mind these numbers because the other thing, I'm sure a lot of people here are property owners. If you're not a property owner, you could be falling into this category. I'm going to wait for it to dip. I'm going to wait for it to dip and I'm going to buy, right? Interest rates will be, without a doubt, the number one reason that property prices start coming backwards. But you've got to understand the numbers behind it. On $1 million property that's currently sitting at 3% interest rate, right? Or mortgage rate. That's a $1.5 million repayment over 30 years. Now, as interest rates on that same property go up by 1% to say to 4%, now a $900,000 purchase price becomes the same repayment over 30 years, becomes 1.5 million. And every percent that the interest rates rise, you lose $100,000. Meaning for every 1% that interest rates are going to go up, property prices have to come down by 10% to be stabilized, essentially, right? The same person, because the banks don't give a shit what the purchase price is. They care about what can you pay me back over this period, right? What can you afford to pay me back over 30 years? So as a general populace, the same person that could afford $1 million at $1 million can only afford to repay the same amount for 900,000, right? But let's use this in reality here. This is where my devil's advocate has to come in. Do we really think, because interest rates over the next 5 years are likely to climb back up by 4%, right? 5 to 10 years, we're likely to see them climb back up to around that. And that's just 7%. That was all-time lows not long ago, right? So that's up there at 7%. So 4%, that means we'd have to see a sustainable drop in property prices by 40% over the next 5 years. Stay there. Just stay there. They'd have to stay at negative 40%, not grow at all. I don't think that's fair, right? I don't think that is a fair assumption. This is why I like these numbers. Meaning that if you're not smart, being someone who's still going to wait for the dip or whatever, you could still cost yourself more, right? That property, the cost of the property in the next 5 years could cost yourself more. Just because the purchase price is lower doesn't mean the total cost is lower. This is why it's important to understand this from an investment space and from an ownership space. You need to understand that, one, prices aren't going to boom. It's a really dangerous space to be in, Matty, when you think about it, right?
100%.
Get these people with this all-time growth, leverage to the hills. People who are leveraged to the hills right now are about to lose a lot of equity and be financially underwater potentially. But then at the same token, as a new buyer, you could also be worse off if you don't buy now.
Yeah.
Right. This is why it's so important to align the property place right now. Forget what real estate agents are saying. Forget what these developers say. The number one thing you need to remember right now is you need to stick to your strategy and your planning and buy what you can afford when you can afford it that aligns with your goals. That's it, right? That's it right now, because either side of the spectrum is really difficult in the property market.
I think also playing in this space, looking at these numbers now, we're seeing a lot of people make a lot of money from doing small renovations and flipping houses and things like that. It's going to be very difficult in the next 2 or 3 years to do that. So a few people are going to get stuck if they're looking to flip. So
I think I think this is a significant way in how the property growth really started in the last few years, bro. Is that we used to see it all the time, especially down here in the hills, right? Out in Castle Hill,
yeah.
Red bricker, someone walk in, knock it down, rebuild it, four bedroom reno, spend $1 on it, sell it for $2 million. The bloke next door didn't touch his place and goes, I got a 4-bedroom in Castle Hill. Mine's worth $2 million too then. Right. Yeah. And that's sort of where this chase mentality, and I think it's starting to happen at the back end of it now too. You know, the people making significant money have spent the last 4 years renovating, which is allowed to get some growth in there. And I think it's, I always do say, I will put my hat in the ring here. I always do say the number one way to guarantee make money is if you're a trader, you're good with your tools and you can flip houses. It's a very low risk way for you to progress. But again, comes with leverage, comes with extra costs, and you need to make sure that, right now, property is a scary space for me.
Yeah, I think those people paying for those services, though,
100%.
If you're paying 50 or 100 grand for a reno, and you're expecting your property to go up by more than 100, 200 grand, and you're only in a $700,000 house up here in Newcastle, not down there in the Hills District. Looking at these numbers, I don't think you get your return.
Agreed. And I think your little FOOP the other day, which I pissed myself at, it's the funniest name of all time. But
so FOOP is fear of overpaying.
So I think we're going to see, I believe, where we've come from. You know, I know myself looking at property ourselves. We're looking for our dream home for a couple of years. You walk in and you actually leverage renovation yourself in your head. You're like, wow, that's beautiful. I'd pay extra because of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it looks great. Whereas I think now it's the expectation, it's the standard, right? So if your reno's 10 years old and now you're trying to flip, I think you're going to see a substantial markdown, and people are going to go, well, I'm not paying that when there's, you know, I've got to pay, especially if any of you guys are recently doing renos, holy shit, they're expensive at the moment, right? Like we budgeted for a kitchen at a client's place 6 months ago for 20,000. We ended up paying 50 for it, right? Like nice kitchen, but COVID, everything in there. So sellers are going to want extra money, but buyers are going to be going, nah, bro, like it's not happening.
Yeah, so I think it's a dangerous place if you're starting to do renos today and you're paying for it yourself.
If you're trying to get a return on it.
If you're selling very quickly
if you're trying to get a return on it. If you're doing renos to enjoy for the next decade, fill your boots.
Yeah, not if you're selling though, trying to upgrade. I don't think you get your return you're looking for.
Mum, Mum, when you watch this, I'm talking to you because you've taken 20 years to reno. Now you want to sell. You're holding. You got to hold for another decade, Mum.
But I think on the flip side, King, I think this is going to provide really good opportunity for a lot of people that have equity in their houses looking for investment properties in the next year or two.
And cash buyers.
And cash.
I think I said this to my clients. So I had a lot of, I got a big Greek clientele, especially down in Melbourne. Love property, right? Europeans love property. And we're all saving for property. And I managed to convince them not to buy now, even though probably could. And we're investing, we're going liquid because debt has been so cheap for so long that those who could borrow the most had the power in the market. You have capacity, you have the power because money was free. Not the case now, right? It's not going to be the case. It's going to be those with equity, liquid investments and cash, right? Which will just target under cash. That's where the power is. So if you can focus on paying down your debt, keeping your equity at a good rate. So if you can use right now, you should be fixed for the next 3 years potentially, or at least close to that on a low rate. If you can use that time to get liquidity back into your home with some equity, even if prices come down, if you can smash down some of that debt and use these markets potentially to build some liquidity elsewhere instead of trying to dive into property again, I think there's a lot of opportunities that'll come that way for people who are clever about it.
Agree. Very good. I think that's it. We already discussed all this, mate.
Oh, there it is. Look. Oh.
So we're starting with that, the fear of overpaying. We're starting to hear real estate agents, real estate experts, they're starting to use that word over the last...
Did they copy you?
They copied me, mate. Nah, I got it from New Zealand. So New Zealand went first. So this happened in New Zealand about a month ago. So New Zealand did a few things. They changed their lending criteria and tightened it right up. Kind of like what Australia did before COVID. They tightened our lending criteria right up and made it really hard for people to borrow. Then COVID hit and the government kind of reversed and let it go a little bit and said, no, we'll get rid of all those compliance and all the red tape around that. We want to let the property market go. So we may see lending criteria tighten up again in the coming year or two, depending on what happens with property prices.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, Matty. Especially, it's no secret. It's no secret that the RBA has been petrified of making reform.
Yeah,
petrified. They let it go way too long, and they got no balls, right? No nuts. They absolutely dropped them on a plate, served them up. I think if we see, I really don't. I'm starting to swing. I've been pretty pessimistic for a while, but I think I'm starting to swing a bit more optimistic, and I think it won't be as bad as we think it will be. Even though I think the reason I'm so pessimistic is I see the bad cases every day. That's
Yeah.
who, you know,
Me too. Me too.
they come and they're like,
Yeah.
you know, lowest interest rates ever, and I can't afford my mortgage. You're like, Jesus, you know, and
Yeah.
we
Or
see
95%.
yeah,
Get in.
and that's
Yeah.
what we see. But I think if I'm being realistic, I don't think it's gonna be as bad as you and I think it's gonna be.
Yeah.
But
it might be somewhere in the middle, right?
it is right. But don't get me wrong, there will be a lot of people. You know, just go to a barbecue and talk to 10 friends. And I don't even have 10 friends, but go to a barbecue and talk to 10 friends and tell me how many of those, if you jumped into it happens to me all the time. It happened to you too, Matty. Go to a barbecue and my mates want to start telling me about all their shit. And I'm going, oh, you're in big trouble, you know?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I think it probably won't be as bad as we think it is. But if there is a bit of bloodshed, that's, you know, the next thing that's going to happen, which is going to be a flow-on effect. The only thing that the RBA can do from then is they're going to have to tighten lending up significantly to make sure it doesn't continue happening. But then that's going to cause more bloodshed in the short term, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's
lots of opportunity. Lots of opportunity.
100%. Volatility creates opportunity, but only if you're flexible enough to take advantage of it.
And you've got the right strategy in place.
Correct.
I think one more thing on this, King, the real estate agents at the moment. So I shared a video on my Facebook group. So they're being taught at the moment. So they're getting coaching this week on how to get sales. So they list, they set clients' expectations, then they reduce the price, which it enables them to sell. So they're going in thinking this property is worth 1.5. The seller thinks they're getting 1.7. So they set the expectation early. Hey, I'm just going to give you market feedback. Whatever people come through, I'm going to tell you. They send 2 people through. They get down to 1.5 and they say, look, I think we need to reduce to 1.5. They reduce to 1.5. They sell straight away. So real estate agents aren't there to help the seller or the buyer. They're there to help real estate agents. We need to be mindful of that. The tactics they're using as well, and what they're being coached at the moment.
Yeah, I think
it kind of gives us an insight into where the market's going as well.
100%. And I saw this, so I think it's important, you know, real estate agents want to call themselves professionals and all this rubbish. And we've got a couple of real estate agents in our clients, but they agree.
Welcome.
we talk about this all the time. They're good ones, and they agree. And this is where you got to remember that a real estate agent's job is to sell a house. That's it. And a mortgage broker's job is to give you a loan. Doesn't mean it's the right thing either way, right? Their job is not to come in and tell you that you should hold. I recently had a client selling a house in Brisbane, and the real estate agent said, you should hold for 12 more months. And I said, just do your job, champion. Let's sell it. Like, you leave that to me. But it is important. This happened 2018. Remember when the 60 Minutes came out and said housing prices to fall 40%?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they did for no reason. This happened. I was a financial advisor at a different company before I started my business. And I was linked up with the McGrath group, right? With McGrath Real Estate. And I was working at a Manly McGrath. John McGrath came through. They saw that, and they saw that 60 Minutes, and these real estate agents were peaking, right? They were, oh my God, you know, all of a sudden they were letting the news guide them on what a valuation was. Fucking ludicrous. Yeah. Anyway, John McGrath came through, and his speech was, your job is not to coach clients on their pricing sell point. Your job is to just sell the house. And the uplifting speech was, sometimes the stress of owning a house is the least, you know, is the most burdening thing. And even if it's for 200 grand less, just getting rid of it could be the best thing you do for that person. I thought, holy shit, this is great. Brilliant.
Yeah.
This is good, you know? So, and the guy you shared, big TP, big toilet paper, anyone who watches it and tries to discredit, he is a moron, or I've never liked him, but he's an absolute flop. But he is one of the most sought after mentors in the industry. And what he's
very influential.
100%. And I don't know how. I've been watching his shit since 2016 and think, if this bloke spoke to me, I'd probably headbutt him. But dead set, everyone listens to him and they absolutely think the sun shines out of him. So it's 100% what's happening, what's going on. I can guarantee you real estate agents are spreading the exact same shit. Anyway.
Perfect. Thanks, King. That was good. Any other questions from anyone?
We've got a question in there from Gary, I think, but I think he's gone.
Oh, that's all right. Any tax advantage on extra super payments? The answer is yes, Gary. There is. we can talk about that offline, your personal situation.
Did he say one off or just extra in general?
So it'll be ongoing. So he's heading towards retirement, and there will be an advantage to do that moving forward for him.
Okay, cool. Any other questions from anyone before we wrap up?
Property investments. No. Perfect. Thanks, King. Thanks,
no worries.
guys.
This will be recorded. We'll flick up on both groups. And also, Vam, keep an ear out for what's happening between Maddie and I. We'll keep you all in the loop and go from there. But also, Maddie's frozen. Perfect. Also, don't stress. Don't stress. It's not going to, Maddie's going to still look after his clients. I'm still going to look after my clients. But we're just for new clients and that kind of stuff. We're going to change the game a little bit. So,
and an extra set of eyes as well across everyone.
100%.
Going to be good.
100%. All right. So we'll keep you informed with all that stuff, but we'll send this out on the groups. And if you've got any questions, feel free to flick through.
Thanks, guys.